Good evening and welcome to Doctors on Call. I'm Dr. Mary Owen, Associate Dean of Native American Health and Director of the Center of American and Minority Health at the University of Minnesota Medical School. I'm also a family physician for the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, and I'm your host tonight for our program on Indigenous health. The success of this program is very dependent on you, the viewer, so please call in your questions or email them to ask@wdse.org. The telephone numbers can be found at the bottom of your screen. Our panelists this evening include Roxanne DeLille, Dean of Indigenous and Academic Affairs at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College, Arne Vainio, MD, family physician at the Minoyuwen Clinic on the Fond du Lac Ojibwe Reservation, and Ricky DeFoe, elder and pipe carrier in Ojibwe country. Our medical students answering the phones tonight are Jaja Wanong, Green Sky from the Fond du Lac Reservation, Nehemiah Olson from International Falls, and James Sharp from Glencoe, Illinois. And now on to tonight's program on Indigenous health. Thanks for joining us this evening. We have a very special show. Many people are not aware of all the different misconceptions that exist about Native Americans, and one of those areas that many of the misconceptions exist are in health. So this evening's show, the first ever, is where we get to discuss some of the ways, different ways that Indigenous people envision health. Many people, for some reason, probably because of the way that our history is taught, are not aware that Native Americans have been practicing medicine for 10,000 years or longer in some areas, or Indigenous people have been practicing for thousands of years. So tonight, on tonight's show, we get to hear from this amazing panel of experts who practice locally on how they perceive health, how they perceive Indigenous health, how they take care of people in our community. Tonight I'm going to start with you, Dr. Vainio. I understand you would like to make a statement at the very beginning.
Akawaya Sema, and actually I learned that from Guivazens, Ricky DeFoe. Firstly, tobacco. So tobacco is a sacrament, and we give it. We offer it when we do ceremonies and when we ask something of somebody, when we honor somebody. But we give a sema, and I just wanted all of us to have this. This is Apakosagan, so this is traditional tobacco. This is the inner bark of red willow, and I collect this in February. But tobacco, it seems weird for a physician to be handing out tobacco when it's caused so much damage. But tobacco, asema, is one of our most powerful traditional medicines, and it gets used for everything. And when it gets misused, it's so powerful that it causes a lot of diseases, COPD and cancers and So, but I just wanted to start that way, and I wanted to start, and especially with Ricky and Roxanne here, both who I've learned so much from and just respect so fully. It's important to start that way.
Thank you, Arne. You started off the show in a very good way, and also I think you nicely highlighted one of the key differences between Western medicine and many Indigenous forms of medicine, and that's this reciprocity and this recognition of the people around you, and reaching out to them and making that bond between us. So, Roxanne, how do you view, given what Arne just covered for us and showed us about a different way to view medicine, how do you in general see medicine or see health in Native communities, or how do you view health?
Yeah.
Is it different from the way it's normally thought of in Western culture?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay.
First of all, with my brother, my nephew here offering tobacco, it is our very first medicine. It's the very first thing that we use. It's that very first, and I like how you use the word sacrament, because that's kind of how we think about it, that this one is the communicator between one spirit being and another spirit being. And so when we think of health, health is a holistic thing, and it exists not only in the physicality of the human being, but in the spirit of the human being. So from one spirit being to another spirit being, we communicate our desires, our needs, our wants with each other, hey? So health-wise, health is far more, in the way that I think about it, holistic. It's an emotional, it's a physical, it's a spiritual, all of that is all combined when we think about health.
And this is a part of your traditional teachings?
Mm-hmm.
Thank
mm-hmm.
you. Mm-hmm. Ricky, do you have more thoughts on that, or how do you perceive health, or what's good health?
Good health is a good feeling. I think we have to understand the world that we're in. First and foremost is that we live in a very violent society, a very sick society called America. And when we center ourselves in that, we know that we will be sick. So our challenge is to right ourselves in that world, to become healthy. So that's first and foremost, because our reactions to those conditions imposed upon us in a sick society are normal reactions. So to be healthy, we say in our community, if one person is not healthy, then our whole community is sick. So then we have to help each other in reciprocity and becoming healthy as a community. And that's very powerful.
And I'm going to tag on that too, though, because a human being isn't born that way. We're not born unhealthy most often, and it's something that occurs after being surrounded. It occurs after the breathing and the eating and the being within that. Hey, so it kind of permeates in that way. It permeates us in many different ways. Yeah.
Thank you. And these teachings that you're sharing with us right now are something that were maintained by our ancestors over, as I talked about in the beginning, over thousands of years. Even when we were not allowed to practice these teachings, they held on to them for us, and they maintained our well-being because of what they did. Arne, you trained as a Western practitioner. Do you have any different views on this, or how do you view this discussion on what health is?
When I was applying for medical school, I used to be a firefighter, and somebody measured my hair with a gauge off my collar, and I had to cut it shorter than that all the time. So when I applied for medical school, there was a big part of me that wanted to wear a necktie, which I cannot still tie, and and black shoes and a suit, and I finally decided not to do that, and I started growing my hair long. And when I applied for medical school, my braid was that long, and but it was a braid, and it felt right, and it felt like when I first got into medical school, I thought that there's so much information, and one of the things they say in medical school, it's like trying to take a drink from a fire hose, that it's just so much information, and I assumed that I would come out of the end of that process like a hay baler. It just takes all this material and it just makes them exactly the same, and that's how we'd come out in graduation. And it was such a beautiful thing to find that my traditions were stronger when I got out of medical school, and have gotten stronger. And it's through working with Ricky and if anyone has ever heard Roxanne sing, it goes right to the center, right to the middle of you. And health is like Ricky was saying, it's a community, and it's all of us together, helping each other. And some people have gifts that our gifts are different than each other. We don't all do the same thing, but when we do that collectively, then that's health. And I see little kids, 4 years old, and I talk to all kids. I used to talk to 15-year-olds about going to medical school, and now I talk to them when they're brand spanking new. If I deliver a baby, we talk about medical school right on the spot. And 4 years old, with a ear infection, I've opened a big anatomic flip chart, and I was like, medical school lesson, first one. And because but I want, and that seems almost ridiculous, but I want parents to know that I want those kids in medical school, and I want them taken seriously as what they are. They're just learning machines, and we all have the ability to teach them.
Thanks. Ricky, I recently saw some health, are you contributing to the health and well-being of our community at, of all things, the passing of one of our beloved members in the community. besides that, besides being at that community event where we all participated in, and we shared community and grew our health from that, grew healthier from that, being together of all places. How else do you contribute to the well-being in our community? What's your role?
I think it's important to learn from elders and ones that have experience in life. And the elder we're speaking about, Mishko Guaniban, we learn a lot, not only about life, but about ceremony. We know there's different areas of knowledge. We've got intergenerational knowledge, we've got some dream state knowledge, we've got ceremonial knowledge, and we've got some contemporary knowledges. And some of the things that when we talk about elders, each one has a different knowledge. So it's through relationships with those ones. And in our language, it's nindaewe, to transfer the knowledge from one to the next, or to give something to the next. In this case, it's a generational thing. So as a community, you have to have respect and you've got to have accountability. So along with that is responsibilities and obligations. So to be able to have that knowledge is something, but you've got to implement that. And you've got to have a pulse of the community. You've got to be with the community. You've got to be in there. You've got to hear the cries. You've got to see the tears. You've got to listen to the laughter, the jokes and things, and you've got to be within there to be a part of that community. So I think it's through relationships and respect and accountability to be a part of a community.
That notion of our elders too, we have held this knowledge for a very long time. And so when you first called me and asked me would I do this, I thought, well, why me? What have I can contribute to this? I'm actually pretty new at walking this way. When I think about it, I've only walked this way maybe 30 years. So it's only a very small piece of my life that I've walked this way. But I've hung around and I've listened and I've paid attention because our stories are filled with these connections, these types of knowledges. Hey, the elders that we sit with, oh my goodness, and I can think of so many of them right off the bat. I think of Grandma Mary Butler, and I think of Badwewa Dunaban, I think of Mwasabikaban, I think of all these ones who are gone now, and I think of the way in which they contributed to the health of our communities. They all carried pieces and stories and songs, because all of this is part of it, and legends, and they held on to this and they incorporated that into their life. So much like us, I get to experience every so often, I'll get a moment of where I know that I'm connected and everything's right and I'm healthy for about a second, for about a split second, while all of a sudden I'm able to make that connection. I think some of our old people could do that for extended periods of time. And I think of Donnie Dowd out in Michigan, and how it is, and he's a bone healer. He's a what they call a bone sucker, hey? And how he does that healing. And I think of oh gosh, all these people. I think of Shake Tent, and I think of Sweat Lodge, and I think of naming ceremonies, and I think of funeral ceremonies, and I think all of this is part of what was handed down to us that connects us so deeply to a line of people. My grandmas to my grandmas to my grandmas, and even those generations that were skipped, hey, it connects us in that way. And that has so much to do with health as well, because I think that it has to be connected to who you are. And when you can hook all of that together, man, you get little moments, of everything's right in the world and I am okay. Uncle Badwewa Dunaban one time, because in his life ended as a result of a cancer that he struggled with. But for a very long time he lived with it, hey, because he said, and I remember it clearly the way he did this, he said, this sickness has no meaning in my body. And he did this whole mantra with it, eh? And it was the way he pushed it out. But the world is the world, and it's hard to stay that way. It's hard to stay in that, and so he eventually wasn't able to maintain it, and so the sickness took over. It did take meaning in his body. But I think of that a lot.
Ricky, you alluded to that as well, or not alluded to it, stated it outright, that connection to community, and then that to our lineage as well, and all those stories that come with it, the teachings that come with all of that. So those are just some of the lessons that we get from Indigenous medicine. Arne, can you think of anything else that Indigenous medicine has to teach Western medicine?
Just thinking about what Roxanne was talking about. Every single morning, doesn't matter if it's snowing or I'm late or it's freezing or it's raining, I do a ceremony. And I connect, and I do feel it, and and at night, sometimes I'll go out, and when you're in the stars, you know, outside and in the stars, but realize that you're a part of it, it really does change the way I look at the world, and it changes. You know, a lot of people have said that. You know, if you think about the vastness of space, you think about how insignificant we really are when we're just this little planet on the edge of the galaxy. And anybody that's seen, you know, the James Webb Space Telescope pictures and the galaxies that are out there, and you know, just the small part of that we are. You know, but we are a part of that, and we are connected, and we're connected through our language. And you know, I've taken language classes with Ricky and with other people, and everybody teaches things a little bit different, but what comes out of that is that our teachings and our lessons are in our language, and our elders were so wise that they put those right in the words themselves. They put a lot of our lessons, and if you learn those words and you learn that language, you know, a lot of that stuff comes out. You know, we just lost a traditional healer, a good one, a really great one. And Ricky and I were talking about that. But Larry Aiken, who was, you know, one of our traditional people and taught a lot of people, he said that those lessons aren't lost. They're out there. They've always been out there. But we need to listen for them. And Dan Jones, Gagi Gabenese, before he died, he took me aside and he said, you need to go outside and you need to listen. And you need to look. Everything out here is trying to tell you something, and I take that to heart, and I take that to the clinic, and I take that to the hospital with me.
What you said about the smallness of all of us reminds me of some of your teachings, Ricky, about humility and how we are no better than any of our other living relatives on this planet, and how that connects us to them, and now that it broadens our community and also maintains our health. But speaking of the language that you teach, Ricky, are you noticing, it seems to me, and just in general, that there's more interest over the last, I don't know, several years in our language, in our cultures? And I know I'm Tlingit, but I know that there's a revival in my language as well. And, are you seeing that in more people requesting this help for their health care as well, more traditional health care?
Yes, absolutely. There's definitely a movement happening amongst the people. The spirit is moving, I think, to re-spiritualize a despiritualized society such as America, from material to spirit, is in force. And I think not only Indigenous peoples are feeling that, but also lots of other ethnicities are also feeling that. And when we pursue the American dream, we found out that we got extremely sick. So again, we have to return from the so-called enemy to come back and find our ways. And language is a piece of that healing. There's many other ways to heal. We know there's this place is full of sickness, and it's all over. But we have a challenge. We have a real fight on our hands, because our youth are our future. And they're deeply embedded in this culture that is very toxic, very violent, a very racist, sexist society that we live in. And first and foremost, I think that we know that we're in that mix. So once we understand that, then we can move forward. I think most often we know that we have to have the attention of our young people, and we get that through ceremonies, because oftentimes the technology is what pulls us away from our attention, and there's so much information in the age of data and information that gets our children and pulls them away from us. So there's a problem with that, and we recognize those problems. We've identified those problems, and so we're working. But I think we have the answers. We need to implement them on a grander scale, but there's so many social forces that work every day to compel our youth to behave in ways. Because our feelings, when we're depressed and we live in a racist society, our feelings manifest themselves in behaviors. And we know that the thoughts then are what drive your words drive your actions become your habits, and your habits become your character, and that then leads to your destiny. So along those ways, we've got to intercept and intervene with our youth, and we have hope and care for each generation deeply.
There's a question that someone from the audience asked us, and what advice do you have for the young as they overcome these adversities to healing? As we all know that we've seen our young people participate in traditions, but then once they hit a certain age, they come up to that peer pressure and the social media and all of that. So what do you say to the youth themselves to help them get past all that and to see the healing in our traditions?
They have to have that stick-to-itiveness, and I think it comes with there's two things: attachment and authenticity. You have to feel belonging to a group of people, not only your family, but extended family and in community and a nation. And that was those social forces called colonialism and assimilation were strong, and they compelled our youth and many of our generations to go towards sickness. So I think we've got to be attached and belong, and recognize that we were not only a part of a political entity, but a part of a nation, a true nation. Mm-hmm. And to be authentic then is to participate in that and be accepted. When you're acknowledged and accepted in a nation, that brings healing. And when you have gratitude, that also starts the healing process is already in place when you have that gratitude. So we know we don't get that from the American society. We are, and I'm not talking disparagingly so much about this American society, but I know that it's a toxic and a very sick society, so we have to understand that.
Right, not the people that live in it, because anybody can see these healthier ways and hold these young people up and help them be healthy.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, just tell them to come back.
Yeah.
Just turn around.
Yep, and I've given tobacco to patients, and I just gave, just in the last couple of weeks, gave some to a 20-year-old that's been way off the path and been in correctional institutions and is in trouble, and came back to see me, and I gave him, did I give you tobacco, Dr. Owen?
Yes.
At the beginning? Okay. So, and I gave him tobacco, and I said, you're coming here for maybe an antidepressant medicine or something, but what you really need is you need community, and you need, and I gave him tobacco. I said, this is what you need. And, this is, the whole clinic is made, this whole thing is here. I'm here, I went to medical school for you, as part of this whole process. And my brother,
The most important message to them is that we're still here.
Yeah, and we're here for you.
We're still here.
Yeah.
Seek us out, and here's the way you do that.
Yeah.
Tobacco, but we're still here. All your people are still here. There are teachers that are still here. There are holy people that are still here. We have our own medicines. We are still here. So don't be afraid to come look for us. Come look for us. Bring your tobacco. We're still here. And I think that's the most important message we can get across. We are still here. And so pick up whatever you threw on the side of the road that you cast away, and yeah, pick it up and work with it, hey? Uncle Porky, when I got my pipe, I said, Uncle, what do I do? He says, well, my girl, you put your tobacco in there, you light it, and you smoke it. Very simply, we're still here. It's still being done. We still do this. So just seek us out, eh? Just come look for us. And it's not. I'm not talking me or just us. I'm saying us, all of us. You know, come look. We're still here.
We only have about 30 seconds left, and someone did ask a really important question. How can Western medicine practitioners incorporate traditional healing practices in the clinic? Anything, 30 seconds of wisdom you want to throw out there, Arne in particular?
Care, and just, care to ask, don't judge. Because some of the stuff it's way different. Joanum is a word that I like to use. Joanum is unconditional love. It's pity. It's a whole bunch of things, and not pity in a looking down at somebody way. It's compassion.
I agree. Thank you. Mainly letting people know that they're part of, that we're there for them, that we're all part of this community together, and that we're, like you said, we went to school for them. Thank you, Arne. I want to thank our panelists, Roxanne DeLille, Dr. Arne Vainio, and Ricky DeFoe, and our medical student volunteers, Jaja Wanong, Green Sky, Nehemiah Olson, and James Sharp. Please join Dr. Peter Nalen next week for a program on upper extremity neck and back problems, when his panelists will be Dr. Chris Davies, Dr. Matthew Davies, and Dr. Sandy Stover. Thank you for watching, and good night.